The president of Ferrari, John Elkann, has come out and attacked both Charles Leclerc and also Lewis Hamilton after the Brazilian Grand Prix in kind of a scathing statement. After the race, he said, "Brazil was a huge disappointment. If we look at the F1 championship, we can say on one hand, our mechanics are effectively winning the championship with the performances they are putting in, particularly with everything they are doing in our pit stops. If we look at our engineers, there is no doubt that the car has improved. If we look at the rest, it is not up to standard. We have drivers who need to focus more and talk less, because we still have several important races to come and it's not impossible to achieve a second place." This is the most important message coming out of Bahrain. When Ferrari is a team, we win. Ferrari wins when it's united, as the WEC results have shown us. When everyone is together, great things can be achieved. We need drivers who think more about Ferrari and less about themselves. And now, to say that that statement came out of absolutely nowhere would be a bit of an understatement, but what is even more interesting is that both of the drivers then came out after the race to do their kind of classic post-race social media post, and both of them kind of basically referenced John Elkann's criticisms about them. Lewis Hamilton very clearly said, "I back my team, I back myself, I will not give up, not now, not then, not ever, thank you Brazil, always." And even Charles Leclerc referenced unity in his post-race statement, which again goes back to the whole, we need to be united as a team to win at Ferrari. So both of the drivers clearly picked up exactly what Elkann had to say, and whilst we're never going to come out and, attack the president of Ferrari, this was kind of a little bit of a social media kind of jab at him as well. So yeah, very interesting that the drivers felt compelled to kind of, have a bit of a response at John Elkann. And now there is no doubt that Brazil was definitely a disaster for Ferrari. Leclerc was unfortunately the victim of what I thought was a racing incident between both Antonelli and also Piastri. And then Lewis had a bit of a messy start to the race. I think he was unlucky with the Sainz collision at turn 1 because I think that was just a turn 1 kind of racing incident, lap 1, those situations kind of happen, but then kind of driving into the back, I think that was a little bit sloppy to lose his front wing. Although having said that, we have also seen Fernando do that a couple of years ago. I think it was against Ocon, who was his teammate at the time. So yeah, it's not the first time that we have seen someone clip their front wing at that exact kind of place in Sao Paulo, but yeah, it ruined Lewis's floor, unfortunately, the damage as he was going around the lap, and they decided to box the car. So it was a double race DNF for Ferrari, and unfortunately, whilst going into the weekend, they were second in the Constructors' Championship. This is how close it is in the Constructors, because just one race can swing things massively, and Ferrari dropped to 4th after their double non-score in the race. And now, in terms of some of Elkann's other criticisms, he talked about the pit stops and the fact that they have the best pit stops on the grid, and that is technically factual. If we go to the DHL rankings, Ferrari actually are dominating the rankings of the fastest pit stops every single race. Now, this is more of a consistency award over the course of the season, and that's a massive credit to the team, in terms of internally to improve those pit stops, which they have done over the past couple of years. Although I do find it quite funny that they don't actually have any of the top 5 fastest pit stops, but they are very, very consistent. Now, this is impressive, but let's not forget that, in my opinion, having very fast pit stops when you're not in a title fight, when you're not in that kind of massively pressured environment, every single pit stop when you're looking over your shoulder at your title rivals, Ferrari have not had that, so I think it's easier to have better pit stops when you're not in a title fight, so I think that's worth saying. But at the same time, this is not something that I think should be massively championed to almost take credit away from the drivers and away from the team, because I think it's worth remembering that Ferrari not even that long ago had some of the worst pit stops and just some of the worst operational and strategical decisions across the grid that definitely cost, I think, Charles Leclerc maybe a race win or two. So yeah, it's just a bizarre thing to be kind of, patting the team on the back for, because they should be one of the best teams at pit stops because they are Ferrari. So why does he decide to kind of praise them, to kind of take credit away from the drivers? What is that actually gaining? Now, in terms of this entire statement, what is he trying to get? He is clearly trying to get a reaction. He's not just criticizing the team and specifically the drivers with the whole kind of talk less, which I'm going to get into in just a little bit of a second. He's trying to get a reaction. As he has said, they are still fighting for second in the Constructors, which to me is absolutely ridiculous because, let's be honest, Red Bull is a one-car team and Mercedes have a 19-year-old in the other car alongside Russell. Now, granted, Antonelli, I think, had his best race of the season in Sao Paulo, so he is contributing some very good points to that Mercedes. but Ferrari have Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc. They arguably have the best driver lineup on the grid. I know that Lewis in particular is not having a great season, but they should be in that title fight, and I think that they're in that title fight for second in the Constructors, in spite of their car performance, which I think is the number one priority. And this gets to the most bizarre aspect of John Elkann's statement when he says that his engineers actually deserve praise because the car has improved over the course of the season. Now, I was left flabbergasted when I heard that. That is one of the most ridiculous things I have ever heard in my life. The fact that Ferrari have improved over the course of the season. It's not necessarily because it's wrong factually, but they were coming from such a low bar that, yes, they've made improvements over the course of the season, but they are still nowhere near good enough. And I think it's worth also remembering, and this is very, very important, that Ferrari is actually one of the teams this season that has actually developed their car a lot more than some of the other teams. Now, some of the teams in the midfield, for example, like Williams, we know basically they abandoned development of their 2025 car right at the beginning of the year. They're putting all of their chips into 2026. McLaren was actually quite similar. They stopped developing kind of around the summer break, just before the summer break, whilst teams like Red Bull and also Ferrari, they've actually pushed beyond the summer break. We know Red Bull, for example, brought their last upgrade in Mexico, which is understandable from Red Bull's point of view because they're trying to give Max every single kind of the best chance possible to fight for the title. So it makes sense why they're perhaps pushing a little bit more than McLaren to get their car back into being a race winner. Now, as I have talked in kind of recent videos, the reason why Ferrari has continued to develop their car is because they're still trying to understand why they started the season so badly. They're developing because they still don't have the knowledge of why their car is so bad, and hopefully that will help them for 2026. So Ferrari have had a reason to develop, and they have developed almost more than some of the other teams on the grid, and they are still behind the likes of McLaren. They are still, in my opinion, behind the likes of Red Bull in terms of consistency, and as we saw in Sao Paulo, even a 19-year-old in that Mercedes is potentially still faster than the star Ferrari drivers. So to me, again, it's just bizarre that he's crediting the engineers so much for improving the car when, number one, it hasn't actually improved that much since the beginning of the season, and of course it's going to improve somewhat because you're developing your car more than any other team on the grid as well. And now, having said all of that, by far the biggest kind of skepticism that he had that drew attention was the fact that he tried to take aim at the drivers, saying that they basically need to shut up and drive, if we're being honest. Now, oh my god, that is just a crazy thing to say, because when you look at Ferrari over the past, let's say 15 years, drivers have not been their issue in my opinion. They've had the likes of Fernando Alonso, they've had Kimi Raikkonen a second time, who of course still remains their last driver's champion. They then had Sebastian Vettel, they had Charles Leclerc, they had Carlos Sainz, and now they have Lewis Hamilton. Like, all of these drivers are phenomenal drivers, even if some of them, are not champions like Carlos Sainz. They're still quality race-winning drivers. And so to take aim at the likes of Leclerc and Hamilton for potential statements that they might have made that might have been a little bit critical towards the team is just kind of ridiculous to me. Now, what I'm still confused and what we don't have answers to is what exactly is he annoyed at, because Lewis did have some criticism after the race, but it was kind of aimed at himself. He said that it's been a bit of a nightmare at Ferrari, but again, it wasn't aimed at the team, it was aimed at himself. He was disappointed in his qualifying performances, he's obviously been unhappy. We know that there was some rumors potentially early in the season that maybe Charles Leclerc and his management was scouting around other teams, kind of, feeling out his options. So maybe, Elkann caught wind of that a few months ago, but that's all I can really think of. I have not heard anything. I think actually the drivers have been pretty partisan and pretty kind of, let's say, their mouths have been zipped up when it comes to criticism, because they understand that Ferrari is a very politically charged environment and that you need to have the unity and the support of the team. And so even when they have kind of criticized the team, it has been so minimal that I don't even think it's worth mentioning. So again, it's that confusion over what exactly is John Elkann talking about, and does he really think that he's going to get the reaction that he wants from these drivers with the statement that he's making? This is almost the hypocrisy that I think doesn't really make sense about his attack of the drivers, where he's praising the engineers about what a great job they've done to improve the car, when the car's performance, or lack thereof, is the reason why they're in this position in the first place. And so, yeah, that entire statement was confusing, it was contradictory, and I think he's aiming his attention and he's aiming his anger at almost the wrong section of Ferrari. Now, in a way, I don't think it's even worth being public with those kind of statements in the first place. You know, even if the engineers are letting the team down, which they are, I'm not sure really saying that out in public would be the right thing to do in the first place. So why is it the right thing to do with the drivers? So this is obviously a really kind of strange also, I think, timing, because yes, we are getting towards the end of the season, but just in general, Ferrari has always been, like I said, a very politically charged environment. And I think what Frederic Vasseur has done is almost take some of that out. I think he has brought a little bit of stability into the team. We know that he was coming under some criticism, and I think rightly so, because as the team principal, he has to take the lion's share of both the credit and also the blame. But we also know that he was given a contract extension. So yeah, it just feels like there's a lot of mixed messages at Ferrari at the moment, and I don't really understand attacking the drivers in the way that John Elkann did, what that's gonna make them do better. Because Leclerc, in my opinion, has had another really good season. He's had a few kind of bad races there and there, but he's kind of qualified really well recently, finished on the podium quite a few times recently as well. And even when you look at Lewis, whilst his season has been a disappointment, I do think that his performances are trending in the right direction. Mexico, I think he was massively unlucky, because had Charles Leclerc not cut the corner when Lewis had already overtaken him, and had Charles Leclerc been penalized like I think he should have been in Mexico for cutting the corner and maintaining that position, I think Lewis potentially would have gone on to come out second place in that corner, and potentially would have gone to finish on the podium, which would have been his first of the season in a Grand Prix. So yeah, Lewis has definitely struggled. There's no doubt about it, but again, to me, this is almost like grasping at straws, because the drivers have not been the issue. It has been entirely the car, and why Ferrari still have not managed to nail the ground effect era. So yeah, I think the timing is very bizarre by John Elkann. I understand, don't get me wrong, I understand why he's trying to do it. He's trying to get a reaction from the team, but I just think that it piles on even more pressure during a season that has already been one of the most disappointing seasons in Ferrari's recent history. And I just think it's massively mistimed, because his anger, he is projecting his anger and giving it out to the media and to the fans. He is focusing on the wrong things at Ferrari. He is not focusing on the engineers and the performance of the car. He's for some reason giving them credit for being mediocre, and instead he's actually attacking one of Ferrari's biggest assets, and that is their drivers. Well, there you have it. That is my thoughts on this very bizarre attack by the Ferrari president. Let me know all of your thoughts in the comments box below. And if you did enjoy this video, then don't forget to subscribe to the channel. That would be massively appreciated. And I'll see you in the next one.